Yo, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It is your boy Jayla. I bring us another football video, and in today's video, guys, we are going to be going over everything to take away from the Patriots versus Texans preseason game. They played it last night. The Patriots did unfortunately lose 20-9, but there still are a lot of things you take away from this Patriots team. A lot of good things, a lot of things that looked really well, a lot of individual players that stood out, but there are also some things to take away that could be viewed negatively and things to improve, and players that need to improve that may have fallen a little bit last night. So, like I said, they did play last night, first week one preseason. Very excited to see them back. It was really fun to watch them. And yeah, a lot of things to take away. It was a pretty good game, so a lot more preseason games going on today as well. And now we're really in the full swing of football because last week we had the Hall of Fame game. Now we have preseason consistently, and then after that, we are jumping right into week one of the regular season. So a lot of videos coming from me from here on out, covering preseason, and then a lot of videos once the actual season starts, doing weekly prediction videos and kind of like up to date with the NFL stuff. So make sure to like and subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any of that. But without further ado, let's see how the Patriots looked last night. So, starting off, we are going to be talking about my MVP of the game, definitely the defensive player of the game, someone who really had a great rookie debut, and that is Keion White. He was absolutely tremendous last night. He had 27 snaps in every single play. He was causing havoc. One play, he tossed one of the Texas offensive linemen to the ground. Another, he actually pounced on Dare Ogunbowale to force a fumble when the Texas running back dropped the pitch. So, he was kind of already fumbling it, and then Keion White lit him up and took him. It was a very satisfying hit, took him to the ground, and then the ball came loose, and I forgot who recovered it, but it was a forced fumble recovered by the Patriots, which was, I give credit to Keion White on that play for making it happen. So Keion White was constantly pressuring the quarterbacks. He was great against the run. Like I said, he forced the fumble as well. So he was great. And, obviously there's a little bit of, technique work you could say he has to work on, but just in terms of the talent-wise, he is going to be dominant, and I think once he's ready to go week one, after these next 2 weeks, he's going to be dominant. And with Josh Uche and Matthew Judon, that is going to be a very great and very scary defensive front for quarterback staff to go against, and I'm very excited to see. And obviously, yes, he was going against the kind of horrible back second string Texas offensive line, but he was causing great plays and he was really disrupting that offensive line. So I'm very excited. I think he had the best rookie performance of the night and definitely one of the best performances in general. So Keion White, definitely the MVP, and he definitely made a big name for himself last night. Next up, talking about Christian Gonzalez, who had a very highly anticipated debut. He actually had a pretty good debut as well. 25 snaps, 24 on the outside corner. He actually did pretty good. He was in phase most of the night, especially on one third down corner route where he smothered Nico Collins. That was probably my favorite play from him. There was another play where he actually got beat on a 12-yard completion to Steven Sims, where Sims beat Gonzalez coming across the field on a crosser where it looked like Gonzalez was a bit late reading the release. However, he did do a nice job at the end of that play to force a fumble. It did go out of bounds, but it kind of showed he has a nice closing burst, and he punched out with his left hand. So that was nice to see that, and hopefully that's something he can convert into the actual regular season. So overall, Gonzalez did have a pretty nice debut. It wasn't anything crazy, but I do expect him to get more reps in the next 2 weeks in preseason, and I do think he will continue to learn and grow, but it was a pretty nice debut for Gonzalez as well. Another impressive night we saw was from Jalen Mills, who was actually playing in Devin McCourty's spot, replacing him at safety. Mills had two defensive highlights. One was on the first drive for the Texans. He picked off C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud was looking right, and Mills read C.J. Stroud the whole way and picked it off, and had a pretty good return as well. Dodged a few defenders and put the Patriots in field goal position, which they got their first 3 points of the game, so that was nice to see. And then he also had a tackle for loss coming from the nickel position on a safety blitz, which was pretty good to see as well. So he had a pretty good night. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually ends up playing safety more this season now that there's some more depth at the cornerback position. We'll see, because last year he kind of rotated back and forth, and he can still do that this year, but he did do very well tonight, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him getting a lot more reps at safety. And it was a pretty impressive performance by Jalen Mills as well. Another more underrated positional battle has been between the punters Bryce Behringer and Corliss Waitman, and I think Bryce Behringer is going to win the job. Bryce Behringer was already winning the job in practice and averaging 50 yards per punt with 2 punts down inside the 20 was another box check. Corliss Waitman hasn't been bad, but Behringer is an absolute weapon, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do see Bryce Behringer get the starting job for the punting position this upcoming season. Another interesting note on Marte Mapu. He was not playing, obviously, because he had surgery this offseason on his pectoral muscle, something like that. So he's not cleared to play yet. He hasn't been practicing in pads yet because he's not cleared for contact. So obviously he didn't play last night. But every time the camera panned to Steve Belichick, Marte Mapu was right next to him with an iPad, taking notes and kind of getting the plays down and getting the system down that Steve Belichick likes to run, which I think is great because Marte Mapu is a hybrid linebacker safety. The Patriots view as a very high IQ player. And I do think it's great that he's there. He's studying the plays. He's getting it down. He's knowing how Steve Belichick likes to run the defense. He was also working with Jared Mayo a little bit as well, and I think that's great that once he comes back, he's going to be ready to go. He's with Steve and Jared Mayo. He's, understanding the plays, understanding how the system runs. So I think it's pretty cool that he was there on the sideline working with them pretty much the whole game and getting the system down. So talking about Bailey Zappi and Trace McSorley. Now, Bailey Zappi, who played the first half entirely, and then he played the first drive of the second half, he did not look great. He was 12 for 14 for 79 yards. He did have one really nice play on 3rd and long, completion to Tyquan Thornton, which was a pretty cool catch and throw. Between the two, I thought it was great to see Tyquan Thornton going up and getting the ball. Other than that, though, it wasn't a very impressive night from Bailey Zappi. However, the interior offensive line, really the offensive line in general, was horrible, and I'll talk about that in a whole entirely in a minute. But I think it's kind of unfair to grade Bailey Zappi yet. Like, yes, he did not look good. It was a pretty slow and kind of it was almost boring. It kind of looked like it did last year with the Patriots. Just slow. The offensive line was doing horrible. A lot of throwaways, just kind of a slow offense. And, Bailey Zappi was constantly under pressure. So not a whole lot to talk about there. The offensive line, like I said, it was not pretty. Now, they did have all of their starters out on the offensive line pretty much. There wasn't any first stringers. It was all second and third stringers. So I give them that. And it was a lot of rookies: Antonio Mafi, Jake Andrews, City So it's all right that the offensive line wasn't great, I guess, because it is a lot of rookies. But I think it's kind of unfair to grade Bailey Zappi and Trace McSorley, who was only in for like a drive or two, Trace McSorley, based on their performance last night, just because the offensive line was pretty bad. I mean, it was like last season bad. The offensive line was really bad, which we'll talk about, like I said, in a minute. So in terms of the Bailey Zappi and Trace McSorley discussion, not much to talk about, just because I do think it is very unfair to grade them based on last night because the offensive line was bad. Same thing goes with the running backs. There has been concern now for depth at the running back position because Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong didn't have great nights. But same thing with that. I mean, yes, I wouldn't be opposed to adding another running back just to get some depth behind Ramondre Stevenson. But the same thing, the offensive line was not very pretty, and they weren't giving really any holes to run through. Or there was one play, I think it was Pierre Strong, who got a hole, and he made a 20-yard burst up the middle. Maybe it wasn't 20 yards, but he had a nice burst through the middle. And plays like that, where if you can give him even a little bit of a hole to run through, they're going to make plays. So I'm still waiting. I hope next week it is better versus the Packers. Some of these rookies can kind of get settled and know what they're doing. So I think it's kind of unfair to, I know there's been a big discussion about Bailey Zappi and how he didn't look great, and Malik Cunningham looked, awesome, which we'll talk about Malik Cunningham in a minute as well. So that's just kind of my thoughts on judging Bailey Zappi on this running back core, which has had some concerns. I think that it's unfair yet, just because this offensive line was not great last night. However, it was not all struggles for the people behind the offensive line for the Patriots. Malik Cunningham, who came in on the final drive for the Patriots, had an electric 75-yard drive for a touchdown to seal the game. He was very electric. He looked great passing and running the football. Passing, he was 3 for 4 for 19 yards, 4.8 average. And rushing, he had 5 carries for 34 yards and 6.8 average, 1 rushing TD, which, like I said, is what scored the touchdown, and then a long of 9 yards. So Malik Cunningham looked great, and now people are saying that he could jump to QB2 just off that one drive. I think that next week, I want to see a lot more of Malik Cunningham, and if he continues to play like that next week, it almost looked like a mini Lamar Jackson. I know that's crazy, but he looked very good. I mean, he was juking out defenders. He was moving all over the place. He looked good. He looked good throwing the football too. He looked great, and there was one play where he was running out of bounds, and I don't even know who it was, but it was someone on the Texans who took his helmet and completely ripped it off. You can find it on YouTube if you look it up. But he grabbed his helmet and completely threw it off. It threw Malik Cunningham to the ground, and he wasn't even fazed by it. Didn't go out for a play. He stayed in the game, and he delivered a touchdown a few plays later. So that was honestly my favorite part of watching him. He also had a great throw in the back of the end zone, and Trey Nixon he was rolling right. I think he was rolling right, but he threw a great pass in the back of the end zone to Trey Nixon, and it was off his fingertips, and he missed it. But in terms of the throw, it was a perfect throw. It was probably his best play of the whole drive. It was this perfect throw, kind of like over the shoulder of the defender, and Trey Nixon just missed it off of the tip of his fingertips, but it was a great throw by Malik Cunningham. So I thought he had a great drive. Like I said, totally unfazed by his helmet getting completely ripped off. Had a great throw. In my opinion, it should have been a touchdown just because, it was a touchdown for Malik Cunningham in my books because it was a great throw. And then obviously he looked great in the run game, and that's what scored the touchdown. He also had a great run for that touchdown. He juked out a few defenders, so he looks great. Am I ready to say he's QB2? If he has another performance like that next week and Bailey Zappi continues to struggle, I'm all for it, because for that one drive, he did more than Bailey Zappi and Trace McSorley did for the whole game combined. So am I ready to say he's quarterback 2 right now? Not yet. But like I said, if in week 2 and week 3 of preseason. If he can continue to do this, he can continue to look good in the run, continue to kind of electrify that offense, which I think that's what it was the most, was he just electrified it. Like, the offense finally felt rejuvenated. Like, it wasn't against Bailey Zappi, but he just played too conservatively. He played too conservatively. He chucked the ball down a few times to like Peter Strong or Kevin Harris. It was just, or throw it away. It wasn't really that electrifying offense that you're looking for. And when he came in, it was just a bunch of RPOs running. Like, it was a lot more rejuvenating for an offense that really hadn't done anything that whole game. So I think that was a big part of it too. And at that point they were down 29 when they scored, and the whole crowd was like cheering and going crazy just because they felt that energy that he brought. So I think it was great. And like I said, I want to see a lot more of him next week. I was kind of bummed after, especially seeing that final drive, how great he did, that we only saw Malik Cunningham for one drive. So I hope we do see a lot more of him next week versus Green Bay next Saturday. And I'm very excited to watch it because it was a very good one drive from Malik Cunningham. Another battle on special teams has been between Nick Folk and rookie Chad Ryland. Nick Folk was the one who did the kicking. He had the opening point score with a 44-yard field goal in the first quarter. He is looking like he's going to be the starter, I imagine, just as of this week he is, because obviously Chad Ryland didn't see any reps at field goal or kicking, PAT or anything. They went for it when Malik Cunningham scored the touchdown. They went for 2 and they didn't get it, so he didn't get a chance there. But Nick Folk did have the one kick of the game, 44-yarder, which was good. Chad Ryland did see the kickoff action, though. He had 2 kickoffs. Both were touchbacks, so kind of interesting to keep an eye on that. Maybe Chad Ryland will get the field goals and the PATs next week, and they'll just kind of rotate. But Nick Folk, he looked good. He only had 1 kick, like I said, but it was good, so we'll see how that goes. I kind of think Chad Ryland will be the starter just because he was taken pretty early in the draft, and he has been doing very good, reportedly, with a strong leg and high accuracy. But we'll see in the coming weeks how they go. Moving on to the offensive line now. This was not a very pretty night last night for the offensive line. On the first drive for the Patriots, after getting the pick from Jalen Mills, they give up a jailbreak sack on Bailey Zappi on 3rd down, and that was kind of right when I knew, like, oh boy, it's going to be a long night for this offensive line, and the offensive line woes are going to continue into this game, which they did throughout the game. In terms of the rushing production in the first half, they had 7 rushing attempts for only 6 yards. It was a very slow night for the offensive line, and that's kind of why I'm hesitant to blame Bailey Zappi, to blame this running back room, which is now really getting ridiculed online, just saying they need another back, they need some more depth. And I'm not against that, but I think guys like Kevin Harris and Peter Strong are great. It's just they really had nowhere to run last night. There weren't any holes being opened up from this offensive line, so that's why I'm a little slow to judge the backfield and Bailey Zappi and Trace McSorley, just because the offensive line was really bad. My hope, though, is that it is not the first string, and it wasn't. It was all second string, led by Riley Reef, who could be one of the tackles, but other than that, it was all, rookies, Antonio Mafi, Jake Andrews, City So that is my hope, is that, it's, not only was it all second string, but most of them were rookies debuting in their first in their first game ever. Like I said, Antonio Mafi, Jake Andrews, City So, Andrew Staubert, who was 2022's 7th round pick, picked in the 7th round of 2022, so he was debuting. So a lot of young guys, a lot of guys debuting, and really their first game where they're seeing a lot of action. So that's kind of my hope, is that they'll develop into good depth pieces on the offensive line. But once the normal starting offensive line is in, I think it will be pretty good. I think it'll be better than last year. They do have a new offensive line coach, Adrian Clem as well, who hopefully will get things rolling as well. But once Trent Brown, Cole Strange, David Andrews, and Michael Onwenu are all on the field, I do think it will be a much better offensive line, especially on that interior. I think Cole Strange going into a second year, I think he'll have a big year too. David Andrews is a very good, consistent center. He has been forever. Michael Onwenu is a great right guard, one of the best in the league. So I think the interior is going to be great. I think Trent Brown at left tackle, he's a good left tackle. He's nothing special, but he's consistent, and he can be a good, viable left tackle when you need him to be. So I think that they will be okay on the offensive line. Right tackle is still up for grabs between, I think, Connor McDermott, Andrew Staubert, and Riley Reef as to who's going to win that. I don't think anyone really has like the official starting job at right tackle right now, so it's still, like I said, up for grabs. But other than that, weren't too many issues. The defense looked great. They looked as advertised this offseason. They looked very good, especially the defensive front. I'm very excited to see that defensive front. And Keon White, Daniel Okwale, he had a great night as well. He had a sack. He had a sack and a couple tackles for loss. He looked great. So I think it will be a good season for the Patriots. Like I said, just the offensive line, hoping that's kind of the big concern right now, really, is the offensive line, and hoping that once the starters come back, they can stay healthy, because as of now, there doesn't seem to be much hope behind them. I even said you could bring in a guy like Dalton Risner, who's a pretty good guard. Right now, he's a free agent. I would be thrilled if they could bring in someone just to get more depth. Maybe try him out at tackle. Who knows? But just maybe bring in a guy for depth at the offensive line, somewhere on the offensive line. But overall, I think they'll be okay as long as no one can get hurt on their starting offensive line. Well, guys, that is going to do it for me. That pretty much covers all of the major Patriot notes from the preseason game last night. I know I didn't cover some of the rookies like Isaiah Bolden, Amir Speed, Demario Douglas, Keyshawn Butte, but I want to see a little more action for them before we start to cover them. Demario Douglas didn't even have any targets. He was at punt return a little bit, but he didn't even have any targets last night. And I just want to see a little more from those guys, get some more action, get some more reps before we start to cover them and really say a whole lot about them. But they do look promising. Most of them have been doing good in training camp, so I hope next week versus the Packers we see some more of them. But yeah, I think overall this team looks good. Really, the thing to watch out for next week versus the Packers on the 19th is when they play next, is the offensive line, to see how they go versus guys like Lucas Van Ness, who I think will be fun to watch, and see how he goes up against this offensive line. Really, the defense looks great. The defensive front looks great. The secondary looks pretty good as well. They were great for most of the game. The offense looks pretty good. The main thing, like I said, is the offensive line. I think if the offensive line can turn things around and they can continue, their struggles end and they can start to actually protect the quarterback, I think this offense is going to be great. And like I said, it's only the second string with a bunch of rookies debuting, so I do have confidence that they'll get better. And once the first team gets in there, I think it will be a solid offensive line. So I'm confident for the Patriots this season. I think they will be pretty good. I think they'll have one of the best defenses in the league offensively. It might be a little more of a struggle, but it's a lot of new guys in there. It's a lot of, changes with Bill O'Brien and the helm now. So I'm excited. I'm excited to watch it. Still 2 more weeks. They play, like I said, on the 19th, which is next Saturday. So I will see you guys then versus the Packers. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any football content, because with the preseason in full swing now, I'll be doing a lot of videos covering the preseason, I might even do a video, like I said, I think at the end of this week, covering all of the preseason games and how they went, what rookies stood out and all of that stuff. And then once the NFL season comes and we're in full regular season form, I will be getting a lot of videos out on game predictions, fantasy football stuff, weekly recaps, all that stuff. So make sure to like and subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any of that. Thank you guys for watching. It's been your boy Jay Lay, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.